everybody. Welcome to the NextHome podcast. I'm your host, Evan Pilati, and I'm back again with the man, Charles Wells, out there in Texas. Charles, quick introduction for those that didn't hear our first podcast that we did a couple of months ago.
Yeah. So my name is Charles Wells. My friends affectionately call me Charlie Real Estate. I'm down here in Houston, Texas. I'm broker owner, or part owner of NextHome Elite Advisors. And I'm a real estate collector as well as a real estate agent and broker. And last time we talked about kind of my journey, how I got started. So just to kind of recap you guys, I started in real estate in 2014 as a real estate agent. And I always knew I wanted to help people buy real estate, but I also knew that when I got my license, I wanted to be very intentional about investing as well. So I went into the business with those two objectives, and it's led me to about 26 or 27 properties to date. And I'm looking to double that portfolio this year.
Okay, so just for clarification, you currently own how many in your portfolio?
I own 27 units right now.
27. And that's been over the course of how long?
I started investing in 2014. I had 5 properties in 2019. So I went from 5 to 20-ish or 20 or 19 in 2021. And it's getting kind of fuzzy, but 2022, this year to date, I bought 6.
Okay, so that's the purpose of this pod. One thing that I talked about was with you, Charles, offline, was about how realtors are not buying the products that they keep touting as such a great investment. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they don't know how, they're scared to, or they don't want to over leverage themselves. I have investments in different processes. It's not as diverse in the real estate portfolio as I'd like. But when we talk about stretching, bro, you have stretched yourself very thin, probably perilous at times, scary at moments, but you've
Absolutely.
Okay. So why do you think, let's start with this. Why do you think some agents don't feel confident buying the product that they sell, which is a house, for themselves, not just to live in? That's not what I mean, but I mean in the investment portfolio.
Well, the reality is, as I see it, is that the real estate agent community is really not servicing investors, right? The majority of real estate agents work with retail buyers. So they are accustomed to that particular process, that particular outlook and evaluation of buying homes. Well, when you're buying homes through a retail position, or you're looking to just live there, well, that's a totally different process than buying it as an investment. So the reality is that most agents don't necessarily have the experience of working with investors to even know where to begin investing in real estate.
And I think also real estate brokers in general don't teach that aspect to their agents.
Absolutely not. And quite frankly, just to be completely transparent, as a real estate broker, it's not necessarily in the best interest financially to coach agents to invest, because quite frankly, the broker is not making any money.
No money. So why teach them that skill?
Right.
However, I will tell you, those of you listening in the audience, Charles and his entire ownership team that co-own the brokerage together, y'all are investors, all of you.
Yes.
Candace, Derek, you, everybody. Right.
That's quite frankly our competitive advantage in the marketplace. I'm very intentional about telling each agent that joins the firm, hey, I'm going to show you how to be a fantastic real estate agent so you can make a ton of income, but I'm also going to show you how to set up your own retirement plan with the very product you sell.
Let's talk about that now. Okay, so mindset wise, you made a decision in 2014. I'm going to invest in real estate. There is an internal switch in your brain, in one's brain, to say, it's time. I'm ready to do it. What was that moment that made you say, okay, Charles, let's go for it?
Well, it was.
Were you already a homeowner? First of all, were you already a homeowner?
I was not. When I got my real estate license, I had never bought a property personally.
Got it.
Okay. And so when I joined the brokerage, when I first got into real estate, I joined a brokerage, and I'll never forget, I was sitting in the break room and an older gentleman was there, and I won't mention his name. But he wasn't having a great day. He was complaining about the industry. He must have been in his 70s. And he was known in the office for always complaining, just always having a negative attitude. And when I got to know him a little bit longer, I realized he had been in the industry for almost 30 years, right? Before there was all the technology, before it was so convenient. And so he had been doing real estate for a very long time. As I got to know him even further, I realized he had no succession plan.
Mm.
Every year he went in having to do X amount of business to keep his lights on. And we built somewhat of a friendship, somewhat of a kinship there in the office. And the one thing he told me was maybe in the first 2 or 3 months, he said, I should have bought real estate. And that one statement changed the whole trajectory of my career.
I think that when you take advice from somebody, okay, let me just fast forward a little bit. So on the Facebook posts, they mean a lot. I think social posts have such currency.
Yes.
And the first time I ever met you, I was a big fan of you. We did training together. You came out to California and the whole team came out, blah, blah, blah. Then I watch you online because that's what we do. You know, you're in Houston, I'm in California, and the only interaction we have is phone, Zoom, etc. But we can see the social currency of what you're doing. Bro, when you put out a picture of you signing documents of a new investment property that you're purchasing, and you always have that photo, and somebody takes it for you. I don't know who does it, but somebody does it for you, and you post it. It validates you to people to say, I know you hear me talking about why rates are good right now, or it's a good time to purchase investment property, but I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm showing you that it means something. All right. So you start collecting, the real estate collector, Charlie Real Estate. So you start collecting, you sign your first property. What was the evaluation process to buy your first property back in 2014? Because I know it's different now, but let's talk about it back then.
So back then, knowing what I know now, my process was very amateur at best.
Okay.
It was just me throwing stones at a dart. You know, I was just basically walking around blind without a cane. So I was just, it had no rhyme or reason. The house looked somewhat affordable, and I was able to buy it with a VA loan. And I had the intention of living there for 1 year. And I knew as soon as that year was up and I was legally allowed to rent it out, I was going to do that. And I just ran some basic numbers, knowing that I could at least cover my mortgage with the home.
So what you said, you did that blindly. You basically said, all right, I have to live somewhere. I might as well use my VA loan because I earned the right to use it.
Right.
You got into it. Did you live in it, fix it up, and live there for a year and do exactly as you planned?
I did. I lived there for about a year, fixed it up, and then we moved out. Now, you know, that one sentence came with a lot of pain. All right. So I
refer to our previous podcast.
Yes, I tried to do a lot of the rehab myself, epic fail. Just getting my wife into the property, because remember, that was our first home and she didn't really understand the plan. She heard me, but she didn't really hear me.
Yes.
So when she got into the home, it was like our first home as a family. Very emotional, right? Very attached. So when I told her 9 months, I said, hey, sweetie, it's time to go. You know, let's just start preparing ourselves. She was like, absolutely not. No way, no how. This is our home. So that was a conversation and a learning pivot point for us both to get on one financial accord. And it has served us extremely well.
Am I wrong, or were you the podcast episode that I did where you were living apart from each other? Was that like you and your wife were living in different states and you were doing something over here for work and she was over there?
Absolutely.
That was you?
That was me.
So that's probably why she was like, we're finally here under one roof.
Yes.
What are we doing? Why are we separate? Why are we going to move?
Exactly.
Okay. I just want the audience to know that's part of the reason why she felt that way.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Totally justified, right? You know, totally. I get it completely.
You're collecting. Yeah. You're collecting house number one. Now it starts to spurn other interests. I'm sure it was a little fear-based in that. Not terrible. You're creating a roof over your head. But what was investment property number two?
Investment property number 2 was our second home that we lived in. So we lived there for a year as well. We used the physician loan at that time, so we had to do it about 5% down. And I had the same mindset of going into the home, knowing that we probably lived there for a year and move.
Let's talk about what happened to the house that you moved out of. Did you have trouble renting it?
No, I didn't have trouble renting it at all. So we rented it, just basically covered the mortgage at the time. So it was really little risk, and we could afford the delta, and we lived in the home. So we knew it was pretty good home. It wasn't going to have too much maintenance involved. And so we placed the renter in there. And then so we bought that for about $250,000 at the time. And now it's worth over 380.
You still own the property?
Yes. Yeah. I don't believe in selling any real estate.
Okay. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that theory in a minute. All right. So one of the big advantages, and for those of you that are listening and learning, this is gonna be a learning episode pod for a lot of people. I think people don't understand the value of mortgage interest deduction. It's MID. It's on your secondary properties, not just your first.
Yes.
Or the one that you own. Let's talk a little bit about MID, mortgage interest deduction. What, for those novice that need to know about it, Charles, what would you tell them? Because I know as a realtor, I've been working with other members of NAR to try to keep MID, because a lot of government, doesn't really matter what administration,
Right.
Democrat or Republican, it is a money saver and maker for the government if they did not provide that. If they removed it and people weren't able to write that off against their income, it would be beneficial to the government. So they've been trying for years to consider removing that. Talk about MID on an investment property.
Yeah, well, I'll just take a couple step back before I answer that question. My background is in Six Sigma lean processes. So as I was building my career out, I said, what is the most efficient way to become extremely wealthy in the United States, given my lifetime? Mm-hmm. And all my research pointed to real estate. And the reason why is because, as you stated, the tax advantages. Well, simply put, the government is incentivized to encourage individuals to solve the housing problem in the United States. So I believe that everybody partners with the government in one way, shape, or another. If you're an employee, you partner with the government by way of them taking out their taxes or taxes in your paycheck before you even receive it. If you're an investor, you're partnering with the government by providing a service in which the government does not want to necessarily provide.
Sure.
And because you're providing a service to the government, they typically pay you in one shape or form or another. And that in real estate is tax savings. So to get more technical, there's basically two ways, without getting too technical, and I'm not a CPA, disclaimer. But you can depreciate the property over 27.5 years. So that basically means that in the taxes vantage point, or the vantage point of the IRS, they're going to allow you to deduct the property because the roof will not be the same the day you buy it, right? All the materials theoretically are deteriorating. And so you're able to what we call take paper losses. So you are able to deduct losses on your taxes when you actually are not spending the money to lose. That's a huge.
You're able to write off the interest, not the principal, the interest, the taxes, and the insurance that is being paid on a secondary property.
Exactly.
Against the income that you're receiving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To include deducting the actual property and materials itself.
And the secondary benefit from that, not only are you getting the write-offs against your ordinary income, but you're also getting your principal bought down by your renter. A small portion of it, as we know, you're getting 0.0001% on your first payment going towards the actual principal. But over time, I tell this to people all the time. Yeah. If you're renting or you're buying, doesn't matter. You're paying a mortgage. It's just, are you paying yours or are you paying somebody else's? Yeah. And that's the truth. And so when you own an investment property, you're providing an opportunity. Like you said, the government is subsidizing you in a form of tax deduction based on the fact that you're providing housing to somebody that needs a rent.
Absolutely. And then
Yeah.
you can also supercharge that by doing a cost segregation and wipe out even more taxes.
What do you think is, as you're educating as not the CPA, but just the dude that's pretty smart and knowing what you're talking about?
Mhm.
What do you think that is one of the key components of an investment property that our listeners should be considering when they're evaluating whether or not they want to buy it? Do you look at the rental income of what's receiving from that type of property? Are you looking at the aftermarket repair value? What are some of the keys, Charles? Like the key or a couple of keys that you're like, these would, you have to do it no matter what?
Yeah. That's a great question. And honestly, I don't get that question often
It's
enough.
because you don't have people as smart as me
Yeah, that's
asking
that's
you
obvious.
questions.
That's
And by the
obvious.
way, and as humble as me. I want to make
Right.
sure I said
Humble and
that.
smart.
And incredibly smart and good looking. All right. So Charles, what's your thoughts on that?
So there's one particular formula that absolutely changed my entire investing career. That formula is cash on cash return.
Okay.
And it is specifically the cash return annually. So your cash flow annually divided by the cash invested, multiply it by 100, you get a percentage form.
Give me
This
an example.
essentially,
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's
this essentially tells you how hard your money is working. So for example, if I invest or if I cash flow $500 a month on a property.
So
Well,
you're
that's
after the mortgage is, excuse me, rent is collected,
Mhm.
paid your existing mortgage, you have
Yes,
500 sitting there.
exactly.
Okay.
All after all bills are paid, mortgage, taxes, insurance are paid, I have $500 in profit each month.
Okay.
Well, that would be $6,000 a year.
I'm taking
If-
notes because I'm learning myself. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Here.
So if I cash flow $6,000 a year and I have invested $10,000 in the property, well, that's a 60% return on investment annually. So that $10,000 investment is making me $6,000 every year, year after year for the foreseeable future. And that's just the cash flow. That doesn't
Right.
include the principal
deduction.
pay down, the deduction, appreciation. That's just the cash flow.
Love it. So what are you looking for? What's the one that makes sense for you, Charles?
I have a minimum of 20% cash on cash return.
So if this had given you, let's use the figure of 10 grand of putting in,
Mhm.
and this gave you $2,000 a year, that'd be roughly, what is that? I'm not good at math. $2,000 a year,
20%.
20%. Okay. So at 20%,
I'm pulling the trigger.
how much per month?
I'm pulling the trigger. Done. We're
That'd
buying
be
it.
like 150, 160 a month in profit.
Yeah, about 150, 160 a month in profit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that puts
2,000 divided by 12. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I see so many people like, well, I want to buy a property, but if it doesn't give me cash flow, then why would I do it? It's like, understand the cash on cash return is one component of it.
Right.
Buying something and having it break even, considering if it's rented the entire time, is still a good thing for you.
Well, I would argue that it's not.
Talk
If
to me.
it breaks even, then that means your cash flow is zero, right? And so
The
$0.
the money in is not working.
Right. The money in is not working. So I would not buy that deal. But if I made $1 and I put no money in, then I have an infinite rate of return. So for example, my first property that I bought, it was 0 down with a VA loan.
Yeah.
Right. And the beautiful thing about real estate agents is you get 3% commission on the transaction, right? So all of my closing costs
for the
is
most
covered.
part. Yeah. Say it's a typical. Sure. I can understand that.
So if I put $0 into my first property and I wasn't cash flowing much, I was just barely breaking even, maybe $50 a month, right? So that's $600 a year. Well, it's $600 a year on a $0 investment. So the infinite rate of cash on cash return. That's why it's so critical to base your decisions on the formula rather than, oh, it's only pushing out $50 a month, so it's not worth it, right? Or, oh, it's giving me $1,000 a month, but I'm just invested $500,000. Well, that's a bad return, right? Or that might be a bad return relative to your particular criteria. So once you set the criteria of cash on cash return, it takes in consideration both the cash invested and your profit, and it makes them relative to each other, which allows you to let you know how hard your money is working.
Now, you have a policy. Don't sell my real estate.
No,
Why did you decide that flipping or, getting out of investment properties isn't for you?
Well, there's really one basic, when you really boil it down, there's one way to build wealth. That's hold assets over time. Simple as that, right? And if you're constantly flipping, you're not building wealth.
You're just moving
in general.
Yeah.
Right. And it's more taxed than passive income of rental property. So you're
putting it in your pocket, which then the government says, well, you've received the income, we want our cut. Versus if you owned it, money's not taken out of the pocket, but you on paper are worth more.
Exactly. The IRS or the tax code is telling you to do one thing and punishing you to do another. It's as simple as that.
But you're not a CPA. So
I'm not a CPA.
Let's make sure we say that. But you know what it comes down to, and it's the truth. It's Tabitha Richardson, a wonderful broker in Baltimore. I was on a pod with her. She talked about generational wealth. She talked about minorities. You as an African American male, as me as a Filipino Pakistani male, like we're minorities, and some options are not provided to minorities in the sense of generational wealth because they are having problems receiving opportunities to be able to purchase. And just the fact of owning something that gives you an opportunity of generational wealth, because just being the person who owned it at one time and selling it at a different time can provide you that income. So why would that be any different as being somebody that's an investor, black, white, or any race in between? If you're holding that property, it's the same theory. If I owned it for X amount of time, over a period of time, and history has shown us, it'll be worth more at some point in the future than it is when I'm receiving it right now.
Sure. So let me make sure I understand your question. Why would it be different from flipping it versus keeping it and holding it?
No, I think it was just more of a comment in the standpoint of just saying, like, I get what you're saying. When you take the money and you cash out and you put the money in your pocket, a portion of your profitability is going back to the government.
Yeah.
Whereas if you had just held the property and allowed it, now you probably leveraged. I'm gonna skip around, Charles. You got my brain going all crazy now. I'm gonna go write offers as soon as we're done with this podcast. Are you leveraging the equity in the properties to buy the next property?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes I'm leveraging the equity in the current property to buy the current property.
Got you.
Imagine that.
Talk to me. What does that mean?
Well, that means that a lot of times you can buy properties if you can find them in a deep enough discount. Let's say the house is worth $100,000 after repair value. And if I can buy the property for $70,000, well, my lender is going to ultimately lend on 80% of the after repair value. So essentially, I can buy and refinance the property and have $0 invested at the time of refinance.
Because you're actually receiving 80,000 on that 100, but your purchase price is 70K.
Bingo.
Got it.
That's the key. So now if I've invested $0 and let's say I'm cash flowing $200 a month, $2,400 a year, well, that's an infinite rate of return, meaning that I've invested $0 and made $2,400 a year. It's the equivalent of going to the slot machine and putting no money in and getting out $2,400.
And when are you leaving that slot machine?
Never.
Bring me a diaper. I'm not getting up. Right?
Exactly.
So let's talk about that. So that's a smart leverage play. I will tell you that I have been the catalyst of making millionaires while never being a millionaire myself.
Okay.
And it's, I wouldn't say it's embarrassing, but it's lessons learned that I did not learn in my 20s that I certainly do now know in my 40s. I say this to people all the time. Yeah. If I was able to keep my knowledge and lose every bit of penny to my name, but I roll back 15 years, I would take it in a heartbeat because I would be instantaneously better at what I do.
Oh, gosh.
and I think about that, like how many times did I sell property in Stockton, California during the Great Recession?
Oh man.
Dude, 3,000 square
Oh,
feet,
oh
built
God.
4 years old, 2-story house, 3,000 square feet, sitting on
Mm.
the market at $120,000.
Uh,
And building costs are $150 a square foot, but I'm buying it at $60 a square foot,
uh,
and I'm just selling it, and I'm getting my little paycheck of a couple grand,
uh.
and I'm thrilled, right? What am I doing? I should have bought every single property during that time.
I call that penny smart and dollar dumb.
Oh
And
my
I've been
God.
guilty. I've been guilty.
Yeah.
I've been guilty. And here's my problem with the industry at whole. And I'm probably going to get on my soapbox. I think that real estate agents should transition more from personal shoppers to economists,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Instead of being focused so much on guiding clients through the real estate transaction, which is important. Let me be
yes.
clear. That is huge important. But why not understand real estate from a macroeconomic scale? How much more powerful could you be?
Sure. And I
So,
think that's that. You know why? Because it's hard, Charles.
yeah, yeah. Hey, look.
You know,
Yeah, I get it.
it didn't show up on that script of that coach that I paid,
Yeah,
right? Hey,
exactly.
is it a good time to buy? Are you a buyer? Then the script says it's a great time to buy. Are you a seller? The script
Exactly.
says it's a great time to sell. Like
Yeah.
you have to know. Some of my best friends are in real estate, and I
Yeah.
ask them about, you know, ballot measures that are going to affect their income,
Yeah.
changes in the law that's going to happen. Hey, what do you think about this one? What do you mean? What do you mean? What you mean? You're the person that's supposed to be the advisor to clientele,
Yeah.
and you don't even pay attention to that. Yeah, but that that's complicated. Yeah, that's why you're the person that's in charge of that.
Dude. And quite frankly, the public, the customer base, the buyers, the sellers, that's what they want. The real estate market is becoming very glamorous, right? With the TV shows, etc. So everybody is doing the same marketing, the same pitch. But once you become the subject matter expert from an economic scale, you can put yourself in a totally different
Oh
category.
my God, yeah, and
Completely.
all right, so let's talk about some of the options that an agent can use in order to buy. You've bought multiple properties. You're 6 deep into this year. You're 25 plus in the total
Yep.
portfolio. You have a game plan of having what, 50 by the end of 2 years?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so by the end of 2023, your goal is 50 to have
Yeah.
50 of them.
Correct.
Portion of it is building. We don't need to go into that because that's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah, that's a whole
When,
nother piece.
yeah, when you guys are listening and you get to your 30 properties, Charles might be a great developer for you to work with
Yeah,
at that time. But
absolutely.
right now, leave him alone. He's in the middle of dealing with this. Charles, talk about the other 10 and the process of doing that. What are
Yeah.
some of the key tools that you're doing to leverage to buy these, whether it's loan products, whether you're leveraging against others, whether you're
Mhm.
borrowing on margin with some of your assets? What are you doing here?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's so important because I really, I really credit my success to understanding the finance.
Mm,
You really have to understand the finance. When you talk about investment properties, there's really two ways to buy them. You can buy them with a primary home loan, but remember, the intention has to be to live there, and there's a certain season period that
sure.
you have to go through. So that's probably the easiest way. The second way, if you exhausted that option already, is to use a DSCR loan, and that's asset-based lending. And the major difference is that it's based on the property's ability to pay the loan back, not your DTI.
Mm,
So I'm able to get to 20, 30, 40, 50 properties, really unlimited amount of properties, because my DTI is not a criteria for the lender.
let's talk about that. So that's important. So otherwise known in some cases hard money loan. They're looking at the property itself and saying, I don't, Charles, you're a good dude. We've ran your credit. It's acceptable, etc. But really, the reason why we're giving you this money is because A, you're coming in with a decent amount of skin in the game.
Sure.
And B, if you make no payments and we foreclose on this property, the amount that we gave you is actually way less for the asset that we're receiving back. So
Yes.
default if you want to. We're cool with that. So what are you looking at as far as receiving in percentage of aftermarket repair value of a property? Are you getting 50%, 60%? I know usually with my experiences, I've been looking at like 35% of my own money that's got to come into a deal,
Mhm.
and they're giving me up to 65%, which heads up, everybody. Spoiler alert,
Yeah.
it's a high ass interest rate. So let's just
Yeah.
start with that.
Yeah. It
So
definitely
it's
is.
the intention of it is to acquire the property,
Yeah.
rehab, get it to where it needs to be aftermarket repair
Mhm.
value, and then probably refinance out of that thing and get out of there, right?
Absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head. So there's really two ways when we talk about asset-based lending or hard money that you can kind of go through. Option number one, and which is the easiest, is just to buy a rent-ready property. That's when you're going to use a DSCR loan, rental property loan, it might be called, and you're normally going to have to put down anywhere between 15 to 20%.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple, cut dry. You put down 20%, and then you got the loan. Now, the property has to have a DSCR, and that's debt service coverage ratio, of at least 1.25, generally speaking. That just means that the actual cash flow or the rental income has to be 1.2 times the actual mortgage. So if your mortgage is $1,000, you need to generate at least $1,250 in rental income.
Now that evaluation of the rental income, is that something that is regulated by somebody? Like, let's just say that we wanted to stretch it. We go,
Yeah.
oh man, mortgage is 1,200, normal market rents are 1,300. I'm gonna say it's 1,500.
Right.
Who's calibrating that to make sure that it's not inflated?
So the bank, there's two options. The bank typically has a rent assessor, kind of like an appraiser, that makes the determination on the value. So if the property is not rented, they will do a rent assessment. But if you have the property rented, they will go based off the lease.
And okay, they're going to say, well, he's currently receiving this on, and so it's valid. Got it. All right. So we talked about that. Now, the hard money aspect of it, I keep calling it hard money. You call it something else. Let's call it yours, because
so I would call that rental property. That first example would be the rental property loan. That's for rent ready properties.
Right.
Now, if the property is not rent ready, let's say it's uninhabitable, it needs a ton of work. Well, then that's when you have to use a hard money lender, a hard money loan. I like to call it new construction or construction loan to make it easier for people that might not be in the industry or might not invest yet. So you have to use this hard money loan, and that's generally speaking 70% of the after repair value, and it's 90% loan to cost. So if the after repair value of the property is 100,000, then the bank will lend you 70,000. So if the property needs $20,000 worth of work and you buy it for 50,000, well, then there's just $70,000 worth of lending that they will give you. So that's how you can finance those.
The money is based on the acquisition, not necessarily on the resale value.
Exactly.
I tell people that all the time. I say your money is made in the acquisition. You need to be strong on the negotiation of the acquisition.
Oh, it's critical.
Yeah. Over the, if I add this and if I add that, then I'll get this top end price. The acquisition price is important. I interrupted you. You were saying.
Yeah. And once you rehab the property and now it's livable, that's when you do a cash out refinance with a DSCR loan or a rental property loan.
And get it to a regular lowered
30-year fixed standard interest rates.
Let's kill the sticker shock. What do they need to know about what the rates can be? And we're both laughing and we're looking at each other on Zoom, knowing what we're about to say. Yeah. What's the expectation to get a hard money, new construction, whatever you want to call it, loan? What's the expectation that that our realtor family is going to have to come out of pocket with?
So the expectation is, when you're using a hard money loan for a property that is not livable, to do new construct or to basically rehab it or remodel it, that is a high risk loan to the bank. So the risk is going to cause the bank to charge you more money. First, they charge you about 2 to 3 percentage points of the actual loan up front. And then your interest rate is going to be anywhere between 10 to 12% during the time you're remodeling the home, which is anywhere between 2 to 6 months.
Whoever you're using is nice to you, man. I'm about 5 and 12. I mean,
goodness. Yeah, we got to reshop you
with a balloon that needs to be paid in 18 months.
Yeah,
and by the way, so as you're listening, folks, this is not your long-term
No,
hold loan.
no.
This loan is get the property under contract, close it for yourself, and get to work immediately. I know for a fact when I work with investors, every day that goes by was a percentage of
Okay.
loss
Yeah.
of, you're losing opportunity because it's so expensive to be there. But again, that's how you can buy four properties at the same time because
Exactly.
the bank is individually looking at the properties and saying, based on the merits of the value of this house,
Mhm.
independent of Charles just so happens to have this house that we're borrowing against, but it's highly leveraged, which means that you're
Yeah,
going to be paying pretty steep numbers
you are.
until you get out of that loan.
Yeah. And a lot of new investors get stuck right there because they
Yeah.
see the sticker shock of the cost of capital and they don't get to the next chapter of the process where they understand cash out refinance and how much money they actually have invested at the point of refinance. And it could be a fantastic investment. So it's really critical that you go through the full analysis to make a determination whether you should or shouldn't do a particular deal.
I don't say I make anybody a millionaire. I can tell you that I've been the catalyst to tell somebody what to do that turned him into a multimillionaire. I got a guy, he came to me in Stockton many, many years ago, and he inherited $250,000 from a family member who
Yeah.
passed away. And he called on a sign call that I had, and he says, "Hey, I'm interested in buying this house." He had enough to buy the house and maybe a little bit of rehab because the house was about 225.
Mhm.
So I said, what's the intention? Well, I'm going to buy investment property and this is what I want to do. And, eventually I want to grow my portfolio. I said, all right, well, maybe we should do something. And Charles, again, I was like you when it was the novice part, like I'm the blind without a cane trying to teach somebody.
Yeah.
But I studied like crazy. I talked to every person that was working investments in the real
Yeah.
estate side. I learned as fast as I could. And I said, all right,
Mhm.
here's what we're going to do. And I explained to the guy, let's buy this property for 225. Then as soon as you get it, let's get it rented. And I want you to pull 80% LTV against this on a loan that's going to be affordable and still gives you cash flow. So the
Yeah.
guy did that. And then we pulled all that money out. So now he has, on a 250 property, he pulled out 80% LTV. He had another 200 grand and we did it again. We bought another property. And
Bingo.
by the end of 3.5 years, this gentleman, again, I'm only the catalyst. He's the one that put
Yeah.
the risk, money,
Yeah.
all hard work in. I
Yeah.
was just the guy that signed the
Right.
paperwork to get him to do it.
Right.
He owned 9 properties at the end of 3.5 years with the same $250,000
Bingo.
because he leveraged it. And the old way of thinking is, I want to pay my mortgage down and I want to get it to zero, and I just don't want to have a
No.
house payment.
No.
Are you
No.
crazy?
Yeah.
Your house is sitting there with
Yeah.
equity that you could have working for
Yeah.
you, and that guy is a good example of that.
Yeah. It's critical, man. I'm constantly on my soapbox trying to get people to take the initiative to understand money, right? Understand the inner workings of money, how it works, just the basics could make you a millionaire very easy. I'll give you an analogy, right?
Sure.
So I am, like I said, I'm Six Sigma, right? That's my background. Lean processing I'm always doing process improvement. So when I first got into investing, I kind of stumbled around, but I didn't really have a rhyme or reason how I was doing anything. And then I saw this movie randomly. I think it was either on Netflix or maybe it just came on cable. I watched the movie Blackjack. You ever seen that?
No.
You
Who's
never
this?
seen that?
I'm Googling it as we speak. Go ahead.
Blackjack. So I'll give you a quick summary. The movie is basically based on an MIT professor, and he had a bunch of students, and apparently
No, wait. It's called 21. I
21.
watched
Yeah,
that
yeah.
movie. You
21.
call it Blackjack.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
about Blackjack.
Yes.
Kevin Spacey's in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
tell the
cool.
story. Go ahead.
Yeah, but basically, if you haven't seen it, 21, as it's called, is the story about an MIT professor. He gets a couple of students, and they basically start counting codes and beat the casino at their own game, right? Yeah. So I started thinking, I said, man, if I'm going to do this real estate investing thing, I like to have the deck stacked in my favor, figuratively speaking, right? So I needed a process. So I said, hey, who can I model and end up modeling their success, right? Who can I point to? And I started researching and thinking. I looked at people, institutions, heads, blah, blah, blah. And I ended up looking or landing on the banks. It dawned on me that the banks are involved in every real estate transaction. So I started breaking that down even further. I said, the banks have all this money, they could lend on anything. Why are they so prevalent to lend money on real estate? Is that by coincidence? Probably not, right?
They're not dumb.
So as you dig deeper and you go down this rabbit hole, you realize that the bank is only taking in money from individuals as well as the Federal Reserve, and they only have to have a fraction of the money on hand, and they're able to lend out a lot more money than they actually have, right? So they essentially are leveraging money.
If everybody decided today was, we're filming this in the middle of June.
Yeah.
Today is withdraw all your money from your account day at your bank, they would be in massive trouble.
Yeah. And it would
they have it in paper.
Right. And they have also made it illegal to incite a bank run. So you can't do that, right? Or you're not encouraged to do that.
This is okay. Ooh,
so it goes deeper. It goes deeper.
Yeah,
right?
go.
So they get their money from the Federal Reserve or people, right? In the form of loan, and they're able to lend it out. Well, the money actually comes into play or comes into the market when somebody, an investor, decides to buy a property. That's how they actually funnel the money into our financial system. So once the money gets into our financial system, it's really just fake money, right? At the time, the rates were zero. So let's say they get it from 0% from the Federal Reserve, or let's even update it to today's standard. Let's say it's at 2% from the Federal Reserve. Well, then they're just taking somebody else's money and lending it to another person for, at this point in time, let's say 6%. So that's a 4% spread on somebody else's money, right? And
Yes.
now you pay the money back over a course and period of time. And they use that asset. So that's how they generate profit. So they do two things.
Yeah.
It goes deeper. Once I understood that, I'll say, okay, that makes sense. And that's kind of easy to conceptualize, right? They make money by charging more interest than the money that they get. Got it. The next objective they have is they want to lower risk. So they do this a number of ways. They require that you have 20% down on investment properties because you're more likely to foreclose on an investment property than your personal home.
Yeah, nobody's gonna be, take my house that I'm currently living in with my family, right, but the investment property, I don't see it, and I'll chalk it up as a loss.
So they only have an 80% equity position on the property. So if you do foreclose, how easy is it for them to sell it?
Not a 96.5% leverage on an FHA loan.
Exactly. Property. So now they are in a favorable equity position, and they also structure the amortization schedule to get all of their money, their profit up front
as fast as possible.
Right? So they have stacked the entire transaction in their favor. So I said, okay, if this is how it should be done, how can I reverse engineer this and do it as good or better than they did? And this is when I kind of architect my structure. So I'll explain that. So and I'll try to do it as visual as possible. So if the bank gets their money from the Federal Reserve at 2% and they give it to me at 5%, let's just, in my scenario, let's just assume that the bank is equivalent to the Federal Reserve, right? I'm getting somebody else's money at 5%. And now that I have the money by way of the real estate, who do I lend the money to? That's a question. I'm going to put you on the spot. Who am I lending the money to? I'm the bank now. The bank gets the money and they lend it to me. I get the money, and who do I lend it to?
Somebody who has an asset that when I give them $1, they're giving me a $1.50 worth of asset that I could take if they don't make a payment on it.
No. You're overthinking it. I'm the real estate investor.
Oh,
they're giving me the money to buy real estate. right? They've given me, let's say the house is worth $100,000. They've given me $80,000 to buy the house.
Okay.
Right. That loan is at 5%. Who am I giving that loan to?
Somebody that'll pay you 12. I don't know.
Who's paying the 12? This is critical. It's right. Conceptually, who's paying it?
I'm racking my brain because I want to give you the right answer and not make a fool of myself on my own podcast.
No. Just think about it. Who's actually paying this loan?
The person borrowing it against the house on the hard money, right?
I borrowed it. I borrowed $80,000 from the bank to buy this property.
Okay.
It's got a mortgage payment of $1,000 a month. Who's actually making the payment?
Oh, the person that's living there.
The tenant.
Yeah.
The bank gets the loan.
Why you give me such hard questions?
Oh, stop. The bank gets the loan from the Fed and gives it to me at 5% interest, and they make a 3% spread.
Sure.
I give the money at 5%. I get the money at 5% interest, and I upcharge the tenant, which ends up being in my market about a 12% interest rate if they were to go get a mortgage with that same house. So that's a 7% split.
You're just doing the same thing.
I'm doing the same thing. So I've achieved the first objective of making a net positive yield on the capital that I didn't have to have.
Yeah.
I only got it because of the real estate. The bank only got it because of the real estate. So now I'm making 7% while the bank is making 5%. I beat them. I'm winning there, right? So there's the other component. There's the risk management, right? The bank is leveraging their risk by making me put 20% down. So now if I go and put 20% down or $20,000 on a $100,000 loan, I now have $20,000 at risk. So what I do is I have the property leveraged out. So I go and buy the property at $80,000 to have no money in as well. So now that I have no risk, I am also like the bank.
Protected
completely.
Because the tenant is paying more than, yeah.
And if the house forecloses, how much money have I lost? Zero.
I think, Charles, this comes into play, and I'm going to give the analogy. Okay, I'm 44 now. I got a baby on the way. And there's certainly not, I'm not going to be the risk taker that I was in my early 20s.
Sure,
okay?
Sure.
I was making good money, selling a lot of real estate, and I like to go play poker or blackjack. That's a true story. I don't do it anymore. Play a little poker, but not like that I used to.
Yeah.
that movie 21 that you talked about was something that I did. I like to play blackjack in the 20s. And in California, we have the Indian reservation casinos. We don't really have the regular casinos like you have in Nevada. So what happens is the actual card room cannot be a bank. So what there is there's what they call the corporation. There's a separate entity, and they sit there and they basically bank for the casino. The casino is just a place that the transaction happens between the blackjack hands. But this corporation sits there with their own money. Wow. And they sit there and they can be the one that pays out on losses. So when somebody loses, the corporation pays it out. But when somebody wins, if the house wins, the corporation gets their money back. Right. And you sit there, and all the table games, with the exception of regular poker, have somebody from the corporation with a big old rack of chips sitting there. And you're thinking to yourself, why is a company sitting there willing to risk their own money in a casino? Well, probably because they win a lot.
The odds are in their favor.
And so what I started doing was, I don't know, one can have the option to say, I don't want to play because the California laws have it. And I'm giving you guys some inside baseball here. Even if you don't even care about it, it's interesting. And it's interesting to me. This is my podcast. I'll do what I want. What you could do is they cannot monopolize that because they're a third party. So I can say, okay, you get 2 hands corporation and I get the next 2 hands, and you get 2 hands and I get the next 2 hands. So I can actually be a bank as well. Yeah. And so when players are playing, I have to have enough money to cover the table of whatever they're playing, but I could be the bank too. So I started doing that, and you can imagine you can do it. So as long as you have enough money. So I'm sitting there and all these blackjack players are looking at me like, I'm going to kill you. I want to take your money, Emran. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
no problem. Keep playing. Because
exactly.
now I'm 50% of the time sitting
Yeah,
there the way the corporation is. And
bingo.
it's just a mathematics equation. If you put
Exactly.
money into a system and you see the person sitting there saying, I'm gladly giving out the money, no problem, no problem. There's a reason why. You're telling me that the banks are doing that. And whether you're talking about Venmo or Digit as an app, when people do savings, Venmo loves it when the money's in Venmo. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Keep your money in Venmo because you can pay out. And then you can
absolutely.
sit there and go, well, why is it that Venmo doesn't charge me anything? Because, bro, they're using your money to go
To
get
make
6,
money.
8, 12%
Yeah,
on money that you are not doing anything with. It's just sitting in their pool. So when you decide to pull it out or make a payment, they're gladly doing that because they're making money on your money. And they literally had to spend $0 in order to get your money in their wallet.
absolutely, absolutely. I call it being on the other side of money, right? So the analogy that you gave, I love that, and I'm gonna have to use that because I didn't know that that was possible, right?
You guys in Texas don't have Texas Hold'em legally.
Yeah.
Or so I've heard.
Yes. So yeah.
It's true.
So you've heard.
Yes.
Wink, wink.
Yeah.
But if you look at the analogy, right? If the blackjack payer has the worst odds, right? The bank, a la you in this situation, has the best odds, and that's why you're willing to risk capital. But there's a third party, it's the dealer, right?
Mm-hmm.
The real estate agents are the dealers.
Right.
They're sitting there watching both sides, and they should know the game better than anybody.
No doubt. If you're watching the corporation sitting there collecting chips after chips after chips over a long period of time, why are you still dealing or only dealing?
Or only dealing. Exactly. You should at least be a little bit on the bank side, right? Makes sense.
If we look at it too, first time in our nation, 400,000 plus is the average sales price in the United States.
Yes.
No matter what the percentage is, extrapolate that out. We're talking about a 5-figure payday in most cases when you close a transaction. Okay.
Exactly.
So when you talk about, we were using a really low example, 100,000, but let's just use 400,000 and you had to put 20% down. That is a significant amount. That's 80 grand in some cases. However, how many transactions does it take to pool 80 grand? In a market of 400,000, based on that, we're probably talking about 8. So when you work with a brokerage like yours, Charles, that says, not only am I going to show you how to sell more real estate, but I'm going to show you how to sell 8 more houses at the actual figure of commission to where you're going to take that and have 20% down for a $400,000 property. And we're going to show you how to make money. That is what 2022 brokerages should be teaching their agents today. And then you don't have to worry about, well, nickel dime realty down the street gives me 5% more commission on a split. Yeah, but they're not teaching you shit. They're not teaching you anything.
I've had multiple agents say that directly to me. Hey, I would leave, but there's nowhere else I can get the type of information and education that I get from us. It's as simple as that.
Broker owners, that's what you need to be hearing.
It's huge.
If you had to go deep into this pod to hear the moral of the story. Charles, if somebody wanted to invest, are you looking at opportunities in the Texas or other states area? I'm asking you that. I'm putting it on the spot. Are you still open to that?
Yeah, I'm definitely open to it. I definitely like to evaluate any opportunities that come across my desk, so I'm definitely open to that for sure.
What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Instagram is the best way.
Really?
At Charles L. Wells. Simple as that. If you send me a DM, I'm pretty quick to respond.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Charles, you're incredible, man. Thank you so much for this insight. This was a lot of fun. And as always, it's what we do. We'll probably have to do it again. When I get a million questions going, now, what was that loan that he told you about?
Yeah.
Thanks, Charles. We appreciate you.
Bye-bye.